All right. Good morning. Well, we've been in this series of buckets, and more buckets. And I don't know about you, maybe not you, but everywhere I go now, I kind of think about these buckets. Whether I think about, people say the word expectations or different words, hot words that Pastor Jim has been using in this series. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this lady was talking. I was like, man, she's carrying a lot of buckets. And if I would have said that out loud, people probably would have thought I was insane. But I see it a lot now, which I think is a good thing. I think Pastor Jim would approve of that. But I've been telling this story of Elijah lately. In fact, I've been telling it for several months now. I was studying Elijah in my own Bible study before summer hit. And then I knew that I was going to be speaking at kids camp this summer, and either it was the easy thing to do, because that's what I've been studying, that's what God was doing in my life, or God was actually telling me that that's what I was supposed to share this summer for kids camps. And so I did that, and I believe God did amazing things through it. And now I've been telling the story of Elijah at youth group for several weeks. And so I want to tell the story of Elijah to you as well today, because I think it has some parallels and it has some things to show us. And I've been really enjoying this, so I want to share it with you as well. I don't have the verses up on the screen today, so if you want to follow along in your old school paper Bibles, this is going to be in 1 Kings chapter 16 towards the end of that, and then we're going to go a couple chapters if you want to follow along on your electronic devices, whatever that might be. I'm going to kind of rush through Elijah's story, but I want to start in chapter 19, where we find Elijah, and it says, verse 1, it says, "Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword." Ahab is the king, and Jezebel is his wife. We're going to find out a little bit more about them in a little bit. It says, "So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life that of one of them." And she's referring to the prophets that Elijah has just had killed. And Elijah was afraid, and he ran for his life. Now, just at first glance, if that's what we read here, of course he's afraid, and he's going to run for his life. Jezebel wants him dead, and he's going to run for his life. Me too. But if we look at the context of the story, it actually doesn't make as much sense as you would think. So I want to summarize for you Elijah's story. Now, again, I've done this for kids camp. This would be over 4 days. And for Northgate Youth, we've been in this series for several weeks. But I'm going to share with you in just a couple of minutes Elijah's story. And so during this time of Elijah, we've got this king Ahab, and he's not a good dude. In fact, he's a very evil king. And it says this about Ahab in chapter 16, verse 30. It says, "Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him." Great, so there were some good kings before him, and so now he's an evil one. No, there were 13, I believe, evil kings that we would not want to be under or to be in charge. And now along comes Ahab, and he's more evil than any of those. He's not a good guy. And then he marries Jezebel, who's also not great. She's evil as well. And between the two of them, they are going to worship these false gods, Baal being the main one. Baal, the god of the storm, the god of rain, the god of the harvest. This is who they're worshiping, and this is who they desire for everyone else to worship that is under them. And if they don't, bad things are going to happen. And so this grieves the Lord, right? Of course it does. It grieves the Lord. And so God's going to send Elijah onto the scene. And in the beginning of verse 17, we see that Elijah, the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead, he says to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word." Who was Baal? Baal is the god of the harvest and the god of the storm. And so now this God that they worship, he's going to be powerless because God says that no rain is coming. Ahab is going to be pretty upset, and he's pretty mad. And indeed, this happens. No rain, no dew. Now we have a drought. And I live right in the middle of farmland, and I know that this is not good. It doesn't say for a couple days. It doesn't say for a couple weeks. We've experienced that. No, it says for the next few years. No rain, no dew. Bad things are about to happen. And so now God's going to send Elijah, he's going to send him into hiding, because that sounds like a powerful thing to do for Elijah. He's going to send Elijah into hiding, and we're going to find that there's a reason behind that. And so he sends Elijah down into the Kishon Valley, and he says there's going to be a raven that's going to feed you. It's going to feed you meat and bread every day, and you're going to drink from the brook. And so Elijah does what God says. He goes down to this valley, and God does exactly what he says he's going to do. He provides every day meat, red meat, good meat, and bread and water from the creek. Okay? And now the water's going to dry up, of course, because there's no rain or dew. And so now God talks to Elijah again and says, you're going to go now somewhere else, and you're going to meet a widow. And when you get there, that widow is going to provide for you, okay? So Elijah does what God says, because God's provided so far, right? Elijah does what God says. He comes upon a widow, and she's collecting sticks. And so he goes to her and says, hey, can you bring me some water? And can you also bring me some food? And the widow looks at him like he's crazy, because that widow, she's collecting sticks for her and her son to provide the very last meal that they are about to eat. And she believes that they're about to die because the flour, it's running out. The oil, it's running out. And she doesn't follow the same God that Elijah does. And she says, as surely as your God lives, I'm about to die. My son's about to die. We don't have anything for you. And Elijah says, no. See, I have the hope that you don't. And I believe in a God that's going to provide. Just do as I say, as God has said to say through me to you, that just obey. Just obey and provide that meal. And God will continue to provide. And he does. He does. For days and days and days on end, provides exactly what Elijah, this widow, and her son needs. The flour doesn't run out. The oil doesn't run dry. God continues to provide all of their needs. Now, the woman's son is going to get sick. And now he's going to stop breathing. And in fact, the son is going to die. And what do you think the woman thinks? This is Elijah's fault. This is Elijah's God's fault. Why have you come here? My son is now dead. What have you done? Elijah picks up the son, takes him up to an upper room, and prays over the son, calls upon God and says, I know that you can bring this boy back to life. And God does exactly that. He brings the boy back to life. And the woman says this, now I know that you are a man of God, and the word of the Lord from your mouth is true. Wow, she goes from, this is your God's fault, to now seeing how God provides. She still says, your God. You are a man of God. This is your God. So after over 3 years, now God's going to come back to Elijah, speak to Elijah, and say, rain is coming. Now is the time that rain is about to come, and I need you to go tell Ahab that rain is coming. And so he does. He goes, and on his way, he meets this man named Obadiah. Obadiah tells Elijah that he's been hiding some of the Lord's prophets, some of the good guys, in some caves. 50 here, 50 there. He's been providing food for them. Because Ahab has been trusting Obadiah. Obadiah loves the Lord. And Ahab has been trusting Obadiah to go out and do what Ahab has asked. But secretly, he's been hiding these prophets. Elijah says, Okay? And Obadiah's like, hey, by the way, they want you, okay? They want you. In fact, if I was to be the one to go tell Ahab that you are coming, he would kill me because so many people have gone out to look for you and they can't find you, and that makes the king real angry, okay? And Elijah says, no, look, I am coming. I will show my face to Ahab. And so Obadiah goes, tells Ahab that Elijah's coming. Then Elijah and Ahab meet, and this is what he says to Elijah. He says, when he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" He's calling him a snake, basically. Hey, you've been causing problems around here. Is that you? Yeah, it's me, Elijah. And Elijah says this in chapter 18, verse 18. He says, "I have not made trouble for Israel, but you and your father's family have. You've abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals." And then he's going to challenge them to a duel. And this is the Sunday school story that we love to hear about and we love to tell, right? Elijah is going to challenge Ahab and the rest of the prophets to a duel. He says, hey, let's go meet up on the mountain. I will bring a sacrifice bull, and you bring a sacrifice bull. We're going to cut it up into pieces. We're going to put it onto an altar, and then we're going to call upon our gods. And whichever God answers by fire, he's the one true God. Okay? Great. This is good, they said. So they all meet up there. 450 false prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of another god. They meet up there. 850 prophets, false prophets, meet up there. And Elijah meets up there. And it's the false prophets' turn first. Okay? And so they cut up the sacrifice, they cut up the bull, they put it on the wood, and then they start to call upon their God. And they are dancing, they are yelling, they're calling upon their God, and silence. Nothing happens. Eventually, Elijah starts to mock them. He says, hey, maybe your God is busy, right? Maybe your God's on the toilet, for real. That's what it says. Maybe your God has gone on vacation. Where is he? Call a little bit louder. And they start to slash themselves. They call upon the Lord, their God more and more, and nothing happens. It's Elijah's turn. Elijah now, he cuts up his bull and he puts it on his altar, and he doesn't stop there. And then he's going to build a trench around his altar. And then he's going to tell some servants to go out and get some water, some buckets of water, and to pour that on top of the offering. And they're going to pour so much water on that it soaks everything up, and it also fills up this trench around it. It doesn't take a genius to know that you can't burn up wet things, wet wood, this wet, sopping wet offering. You can't do that, right? Only frustration happens. So Elijah calls upon the Lord. And it says, at the time of the sacrifice, Elijah stepped forward and prayed, and he says, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and it licked up all the water in the trench. God answered by fire. And when all the people saw this, they fell before the Lord and they cried, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." Now Elijah knows that there are still false prophets probably hanging out in the back leaning across by a tree and thinking, that's not so great, right? But Elijah knows that these false prophets still exist, and he needs to get them as far away as possible from what is happening over here is revival. And so he does. He says, seize those false prophets, take them down to the valley, and kill them. And that's what happens is these false prophets are slaughtered. They are taken as far away from this revival as possible. And so now Elijah knows that rain is coming. Fire has come, but rain has not. And so Elijah is going to go up to the mountain. and now he's going to pray for rain. And he's got a servant up there with him. Elijah is flat on his face in humility praying to God for rain. And he's got a servant that he says, hey, go to the edge of the mountain and look for rain and come back and report. So the servant does that, comes back. There's nothing, Elijah. Elijah says, go again. He comes back. There's nothing. 7 times Elijah is praying in humility on his face for rain, and he keeps telling his servant to go out and look for rain. The 7th time, the servant comes back and says, hey, there's this tiny little cloud about the size of a man's hand that I see rising up. And I believe probably before the servant even could stop talking, Elijah says, that's it. That's rain. God is about to send rain. And so Elijah comes down from the mountain. He goes to Ahab and he says, hey, get out of here before the rain stops you. And then what Elijah's going to do is going to tuck his cloak into his belt. He's going to hitch up his dress, right? He has sent the king off on a chariot to get out of here, but Elijah is going to run after Ahab. And Elijah is going to run after Ahab, I believe, because he's been before the Lord. He has been praying to God, and I believe he's running to Ahab to give him one last chance. Look, turn from your wicked ways. Follow the Lord, because I know this God that is faithful, and he is sending rain just like he said he was going to do. And so he is going to run on foot, and he's going to get past Ahab to stop him. Great, right? God has done amazing things, yet what did we start with? Now we're in chapter 19, and Jezebel has heard about what Elijah did to those false prophets, and she's mad. And she tells Elijah, hey, if by tomorrow the same thing doesn't happen to you that you just did to those false prophets, bad things are going to happen, right? And so now it says Elijah was afraid and he runs for his life. Now that we know the context, this is nothing new, Elijah. You've known that whatever you were doing to follow the Lord, to follow God's commands, that was dangerous. Jezebel didn't like you before. She certainly doesn't like you now. Why now is Elijah running for his life? It says he ran for his life when he came to Beersheba in Judah. He left his servants there. While he himself went a day's journey into the desert, he came to the broom tree, sat down under it, and he prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the tree and he fell asleep. Do you think Elijah's carrying some buckets? Now, if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, if you would have used the word buckets in this story, I would have thought you were crazy. I don't know what you're talking about, right? Anyone jumping in the middle of this might wonder, what are buckets? But we know that Pastor Jim has been talking about these buckets that we carry, these buckets of experiences and expectations and pain and intentions and failure and successes. These buckets, these relationships, all of them that we carry. We pick them up, we walk along, we pick up another one, we walk along. I think Elijah's been carrying some buckets. I want to talk particularly about the bucket of experiences that Pastor Jim has talked about. With experiences, we either celebrate them, we hide them, or we ignore them. I don't think Elijah's been ignoring these experiences, right? I believe that what got Elijah to this point was knowing exactly what had happened before. God providing by a raven all of his needs, and then providing a woman, a widow, and her son, all that the three of them needed, even though their supply was about to run out. Bringing the son back to life, consuming the entire sacrifice by fire. and bringing the rain. All of these experiences, I don't believe he's ignored. I believe that he's gotten this far because of that. But has Elijah stopped to celebrate? Has Elijah stopped to celebrate what God has done? I could be very wrong, and the author could have omitted those things, but I don't think so. We see Elijah going from experience to experience, and he doesn't stop, right? It's almost as if he's running from thing to thing. Great, God did that, check. And he runs to the next one. And along the way, he's picking up these buckets, and he's carrying them all on his own. And now he's plumb tired, and he's worn himself out. And he's freaking out because now she says that she's going to kill him. Newsflash, Elijah, this is nothing new. This has been all along. She's wanted your head. Many people have wanted your head. But now that was the last straw. He's tired. And he's tired of carrying those buckets on his own. So Elijah is now asleep. How is God going to respond to Elijah? All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then he lay down again. Great. God's providing food, right? The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." Twice, God is going to come to him through an angel and give him food to eat. He's going to continue to provide just the way God has done along the entire journey. But the thing that I see in here is that God is giving him rest. He's allowing him to get up and eat, and then he falls back asleep. God's not saying, "Get up, go, 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 go." No, he's not. He's saying, rest and eat, and then rest and eat some more. Rest. We've been talking about rest, and we know that Pastor Jim has been talking about Matthew 11, and this is what Jesus is saying. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Next one. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Yoke. We've learned about what yoke means, right? Is that it's in rabbinical times, it wasn't necessarily the thing that we know that connects two animals together, but it would have been the teachings or the rhythms of these rabbis. Jesus is saying, "Take my teachings upon you. Hear what I have to say. Do what I require. Do what I'm asking you to do." And it's easy. It's not hard. Now, is Jesus saying, rest, quit, okay, you've had a lot, now you're going to be done? No, he's not. He's not saying quit. And that's not what God is going to tell Elijah. Elijah is going to continue on. And now the angel of the Lord says, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate, and he drank. And strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached the mountain of God. He is going to meet the Lord again on a mountain. Many believe that this was the mountain where the Ten Commandments were given to Moses. He's about to see the Lord. Then he went into the cave and he spent the night. The word of the Lord came to Elijah, and he says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Now on the mountain, this question is going to come to Elijah twice. And Elijah is going to respond the same way twice. He says, "I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." Now, if I was the angel, which is a good thing that the Lord didn't make me an angel, because I don't have quite as much grace, right? If I was the angel, I would have been counting, right? Okay, I've been very zealous for the Lord, right? True, right? The Israelites have rejected your covenant. True. They've broken down your altars. Also true. They put your prophets to death with the sword. Yep, that happened. True. And I'm the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me. Wrong, Elijah. You are wrong. Elijah is believing this lie that all along he's had to do this by himself. And in fact, he has done it by himself. Now, to be fair, God did send him into hiding, right? He sent him down into a ravine, and he's being fed by ravens and drinking water from a creek, okay? Great. There's probably not a whole lot of people there, okay? And we do find out that Obadiah has been hiding all the good guys in caves and providing for them there. Fair, okay? But Elijah also had a servant up on the mountain that he sent out 7 times who was faithful with him, and he's going to leave him. He says, hey, you stay here. Hey, whatever buckets that you were carrying, whatever burdens that you were carrying, I'm going to take those now. It's my turn, okay? And he hitches up his gown, and he takes all those buckets, and he runs towards Ahab. Now, in this story, we know that it doesn't say buckets. But if you get the picture, we're seeing that Ahab, all along, he's done it by himself. Now we're getting to the real reason why Elijah wants to die. Because he's believing this lie that he's had to do this all by himself. And if I were the angel, I would have been like, no, you were right up until this point. You're wrong, Elijah. And God's going to respond, not in the way that me, with little grace, responds, but God's going to respond by having Elijah quit. Yeah, you were right. All by yourself. Quit. I'll give this job to somebody else. No. He's going to continue to give Elijah a task, and he's going to tell Elijah, hey, go back where you came from. And there, you're going to find some people, and I want you to anoint them, to bring them alongside you. One of them actually is going to be not a great guy, but he's going to do what the Lord has him do, which is to punish Israel. Okay? So you're going to anoint these 3 guys. And then, verse 8 of chapter 18, it says, yeah, I reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and all whose mouths have not kissed him. 7,000 people who still exist that have not bowed down to Baal. In fact, they love the Lord. And I'm going to put you in contact with those people. Elijah, I see you and I hear you. You were wrong, but I am a God of grace. And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to continue to provide for you so that you know that you don't have to carry these buckets alone. You don't have to do this alone. That was never my intention. Remember what I've done, but hey, bring some people along. And if we remember the rest of Elijah's story, he's going to anoint Elisha, who's going to take over for Elijah after Elijah doesn't actually pass away. That's a whole different part of the story. He goes up into the clouds without actually dying. You can continue to read Elijah's story in 1 Kings. It's a great story, and I love telling it. Maybe I haven't said anything new, anything you didn't know today. But as we were singing that last song, I was reminded of who God is, right? He's a good, good Father. And because he's a good, good Father, and because he's perfect in all of his ways, who am I? I'm loved. I am loved. And Elijah was loved, and he was seen by God. And God didn't let him quit. God didn't let him stay there and wallow in his pity. He said, no, you're going to rest here. You're also going to nourish the body that I've given you, but then you're going to continue on, and you're going to continue to go and do the task that I've asked you to do. But I'm going to remind you, and I'm going to continue to provide for you the people that I have for you. I'm saying it to myself, but what lie are you believing that you have to do this alone? Whether it's parenting, whether it's putting on something for the PTA, or doing something for the church, for the Lord, whatever it might be, are you believing this lie that you're the only one? Look around. You're not the only one. I say it to myself all the time. God is a good, good Father, and because of that, all we have to know is a simple truth, is that we are loved. That's who we are. That's who we are. And if we believe that, if we believe that we're not alone, we don't have to carry these buckets alone. But it requires us to go back to the mountain and to hear from the Lord. I completely skipped over the story that we love, of the fact that God doesn't speak through fire. He doesn't speak through a tornado. He speaks in a still, small voice, right? We love that story. We love to know that God speaks in a still, small voice. But are we listening to it? Or are we picking up our buckets and staring at the ground just so that we have enough strength to continue to carry them on our own? I don't know if you're believing that lie. I fall into the trap all the time of believing that lie, but we don't have to do it alone. God, we thank you that you are a good, good Father. And because of that, because you are perfect in all of your ways, I don't have to be. But I get to believe the truth that I am loved. And I get to walk forward in obedience and allow you to carry the buckets and allow the people that come alongside me to bear the burden together. God, I pray for any of us who might be believing that lie, that we're all alone. And we just fall deeper and deeper into isolation because we look around us and we don't see anyone that can come alongside us. God, I believe that you do that for us. May we first see that you are with us and that you are walking alongside us. And then when we see those around us, whether it's in our life group, whether it's those we're serving alongside in the church, or it's a neighbor across the street, or it is someone on a committee with us, or maybe it's our spouse and we've been isolating ourselves from them. God, whatever it is, would you help us to see them? And would you give us the words to express that we feel alone and that we need help? God, thank you that you do that for us. May we go from here and may we shed those burdens that we brought in here, and may we walk with freedom knowing that who we are is loved by you. And pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.